The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Betrayal by the Kufans set this moon on its course, calling out for their guide. Treachery with no remorse, Muslim and his sons. What a tragedy, oh what calamity. The moon bleeds to foresee, the moon bleeds to foresee. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. On the 9th it heard the prayers of those pure souls, fought the rising sun for. Perhaps this could be its role. Akbar's azan so clear, this moon filled with fear. How will it possibly arise and see the state of those dear, and see the state of those dear? The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. It saw the 6-month infant, no water but an arrow. That night it shone its light on Rabab, filled with such sorrow. To see my asghar I crave, I hear nothing but his cries. Oh son, please do not arise, and with this mother sympathize, and with this mother sympathize. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Witnessed it the trampling on Sham-e Ghariba, saw that night the terror, bodies scattered afar, tents looted and on fire, earrings snatched from Ruqayyah. This moon also in such pains, this household bound in chains, this household bound in chains. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. From this month my baby had to wander veilless. Zahra's grave is restless for her daughter princess, the cloak of purity. For this mother so holy, the beloved of Fatima, paraded in the bazaar, paraded in the bazaar. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala.
الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي والذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Sisters and brothers, thank you all for coming on time today. Welcome to our program here on the night of the eve of the 10th of Muharram, the eve of Ashura. Today is the 9th of Muharram. Today is the eve of Ashura. As is customary, we will begin our program here with the recitation of the Qur'an, and Brother Kareem is going to lead us in the recitation. Please welcome him with loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشكرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
In the name of God, Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. You who believe, seek help in steadfastness. Prayer. Your God is steadfast. Do not say that those who are killed in God's cause are dead. They are alive, but you do not realize it. We shall certainly test you with fear and hunger, and loss of property, lives, and crops. But prophets give good news to those who are steadfast. Those who say, when afflicted with calamity, we belong to God, to him we shall return. These will be given blessings and mercy from their Lord, and it is they who are rightly guided.
Once again, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to our program this evening. Just to give you a preview, we will have a Marthiya taking us to about 7:45, and then we'll have our nightly lecture from Sayyid Kirmani, which will be followed by Latmiyah, taking up Salaat al-Maghribain, and then we'll conclude with the Salaat al-Maghribain, inshallah. This, I request Brother Mansoor Naqvi to come. Oh, I'm sorry. Brother Mansoor, wait a minute. You got competition now, you know. Sister Zara, she has written a letter to Imam Hussein. Okay, I'm going to ask her to read it twice. Once for the people who are here, and second time for the people who are not here later on, inshallah. Come on, Zara. I will take this podium away so we can see you completely. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahsanur Asfahani. I'm 7.5 years old, and I'm going to be reading a letter to Imam Hussein. I hope you like it. Dear Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, I know a lot about you, but I've never met you. You are a hero, a big star, a very brave person. Everyone loves you. We come to appreciate you every year. I'm sorry I wasn't there to help you in Karbala, but if I was, I would have helped you and your daughter Ruqayya, and I would have given her food and water. Tonight is the night of Ashura, of the Muharram moon. The crescent will be a full circle soon. Zainab, you are a very strong woman. I am sad that you are going to be alone tomorrow, but I am also glad that you have so many people that love you now and share your sorrow. And that is why I love you, Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, and your wonderful family.
It's a very beautiful letter, Zara. Shall we hear it again later today, okay? Thank you. I'm now going to request Brother Mansoor.
Muhammad Ali Muhammad Bulanda Salawat. खल्क़ में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा मुझे खल्क़ में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या हर कहीं सिब थे पैगंबर सना आका देखा रही खल्क में मैंने देखा में शाह को आलूदाए खून मैंने देखा लमे शाह को आलूदाए खून मैंने अब्बास को बेजान लबे दरिया देखा रही खल्क में मैंने देखा असग़र का गला खून में तर मैंने देखा अली असग़र का गला खून में तर मैंने ज़ख्मी अली अकबर का कलेजा देखा मुजरई क़ल्ब में एक गठड़ी शहीदी पोस्ट पे लाए उसमें एक गठड़ी शहीदी पोस्ट पे लाए उसमें मैंने टुकड़े हुए कासिम का सरापा देखा मुजरई खल्क में हाय क्यों हो न गई कोई के इन आँखों ने हाय क्यों हो न गई गोर के इन आँखों ने पैद खाने में सकीना का जनाजा मुजरई खल्क ने बेरदा खल्क ने उस बीबी के सर को देखा बेरदा खल्क ने उस बीबी के सर को देखा जिसकी मादर का किसी ने न जनाजा देखा मुजरई खल्क में कहती थी ज़ैनब मुज़्तर के खुदा खैर करे कहती थी ज़ैनब मुज़्तर के खुदा खैर करे रात को ख्वाब में हुरिया सर ज़हरा देखा मुजरई खल्क में मोहम्मद आली मोहम्मद बुलंदर
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we wait for Sayyid Kirman to arrive, I just want to go over what I went through yesterday. And unfortunately, the things were not clear on the screen, so people at home were not able to follow along with me what I was saying. So basically, this is our request to you to consider helping us cover the expenses we incurring. Last winter, we had, as you know, in February, it was a big snowstorm. And after the snowstorm, there's we discovered a leak, water leak. We figured out that there's a leak was going on for a few years. And, quite a significant portion of the roof was damaged. And so far, we've incurred about 45,000 or so, 40,000 plus expense in repairing the roof and that work there. And still more painting work has to be finished and the new electrical fixtures have to be installed. So basically, we were projecting an expense of 70,000. Now, Muharram, so Ramadan, our budget was 10,000. We spent 21,000 because of 6. Muharram budget was 10,000. We expect to spend about 16,000. We hope to cover the deficit with the donations. The donations target was 72,000. So far, we have 50,000. So overall, we are going to be short about 32,000. Given the appeal that I had last night, I thank you, everybody for responding. We were able to collect roughly about $3,000, but we're quite a ways off there on what we need to do for making sure that we are in the black this year. So I'd like to request all of you guys, please think about it. And this will not be the last time you hear me. And I'm going to leave you with this reading from the Quran, and let's reflect on it.
ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل مثل ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر والملائكة والكتاب والنبيين وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والموفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء وحين البأس أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المتقون مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف لمن يشاء والله واسع عليم
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوضوا إلى الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الدين عند الله الإسلام صدق الله العلي العظيم. مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters, Islam and Iman, here in Seattle or across the globe, wherever you're hearing my voice, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: do we need religion in the 21st century? We've been discussing the movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and within that we've said that the movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gives us a life in every era and every time. It gives us a rebirth, a renaissance. And within that, we've been saying that the future of our community is on the line here, and we're discussing the future of our community. That is, will there be anyone in this Husseyniyas, these Imam Bargas, in 15, 20 years? And I'm talking specifically about separate from the population that may be the migrant population, because you may say there are people who may be migrants, they will continue to come. I agree with you. There may be the convert or the revert community. But the question I'm asking is that generation whose parents may have come from abroad, but they were born and raised here, will they continue to come? And will they continue to come to the mosque in the Husseiniya? And of course, it's very difficult to predict the future, but we can make some extrapolations based on other people's experiences and the pages of history. And so tonight, we're coming forward with this conversation. We have to close a lot of loops, tomorrow being Ashura, and we have to try to get to some conclusion. And inshallah, in our discussion on Tuesday, hopefully we can discuss some solutions to some of these problems that we may be facing. Therefore, tonight's conversation is specifically around the need for religion. Do I need religion in the 21st century or not? Because many people come forward and say that, religion is archaic. Religion is something that is for a century or two ago, at least, if not more. That maybe if you were in the 1600s, you needed religion. Maybe if you were in the 1500s, you needed religion. But why do you need religion now? Now we have everything that we need. Religion, maybe there was a time where religion had some purpose for humanity, maybe 1,000 years ago, maybe 500 years ago. But today we've evolved, we've developed, we're a modern society, we have technology, we have laws, we have regulations. We don't need religion anymore to tell us what is going on. So this is one of the common narratives that emerges. And so that question fundamentally becomes what is the value of religion in the 21st century? And we hope to address this and tackle this head on in this conversation tonight. The first thing that I want to look at is, let's come back to where we started this conversation a few nights ago at the beginning, and how does it relate to our conversation by now? The next thing that I want to look at is, what are some of the arguments against religion? And what is it that you and I can understand about what those arguments tell us about how people are thinking? The third level what we'll look at is, what is the relationship between religion and violence in history? And has religion been the main cause of violence throughout history or not? And if so, what has been? The next thing that we'll look at is, how important, if it is, how important is religion in the 21st century? And why do we need it now more than ever? And the final thing that we'll look at is that there is a caveat to everything that we're about to say. And what is that caveat, or what is that condition that needs to be met if religion is going to help us into the 21st century, and we can actually be those who are following the right path? Finally, inshallah, being Shab Ashur, will be commemorating predominantly the Masa'il of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his family. This is our agenda for tonight. Wherever you are here in Seattle or across the globe, from the bottom of your heart, send us salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At the first level, the verse that I recited at the beginning, and some of you are very astute and have picked up on this, even though sometimes I'm not able to directly get to the verse, believe it, there are some people who watch these lectures online and they watch it a few times because I go very fast. There are people who have watched some of my lectures 3 or 4 times, and they said, we needed to watch it a few times to get it. And I get that, because I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking to future generations who are going to see these videos in the future. And oftentimes I keep that in my mind. There are some things that you have to keep in mind that you may be seeing right now, but you're not saying it to your audience directly in front of you. Sometimes you have to say things that the audience in front of you may not be ready. I know Seattle's ready for it, but in other places they may not be ready for it. I'll give you an example. Iqbal, Allama Iqbal, the great poet who's known as Iqbal Lahori in Persia, and he's known as Allama Iqbal in the Indian subcontinent. Now we praise him and we hail him and we're like, what an amazing, magnificent mind. But if you are in his time, they were giving every kufr fatwa possible that you can think of. He was like, this is the biggest kafir we can think of. For example, when he writes shikwa, they said, this guy's, he's complaining to God. What kind of person is this? But they didn't know the wisdom of he has jawab shikwa also to come. So these are the things that you need. For example, many other peoples historically, in their time, people said these were the biggest heretics. And this happened. So I'm speaking to you, but I'm also speaking to some people down the line. So now coming to this conversation with respect to what we're talking about here and what we're discussing is inna dina indallahi al-Islam. Even though I didn't always explicitly connect the verses, the verse that I recited at the beginning had a connection. So last night's conversation, I was saying Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. The concept was Tawheed and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, Allah says inna dina indallahi al-Islam, that verily the deen near Allah is Islam. Now notice I didn't say religion. We often say deen means religion. That's not comprehensive. There are certain words which you cannot translate into English straight away. For example, haya. Haya you cannot translate straight away into English. You need a few words to come together. You need haya, coyness, modesty, and all of these words come together and give you some idea what haya is. But if you go to, for example, the Hawza in Najaf, and you actually experience that, you may find haya in the air, for example. It's part of the environment. So one thing that's very important is if you want to understand a culture and a dynamic of a people, you need to understand the language. In fact, modern philosophers have said if a word does not exist in a language, that trait does not exist in that culture, that environment. That's why some of the biggest philosophers of the 20th century were linguists, the likes of Wittgenstein, the likes of Chomsky. These people were linguists because the 20th century philosopher said language is what determines the reality around us. This was their argument. So now coming back to this. Inna dina indallahi Islam. Does it mean religion? Well, hold on a second. Maliki yawmid din. Master of the day of religion? That doesn't quite make sense. So you realize that it's not exactly religion that's being stated here. The more close term to deen would be way of life. But when it's in that context, there's another meaning or judgment or decision. So the point that I'm getting at is when we say Islam, we are talking about a complete comprehensive way of life. But if you say Islam is a complete comprehensive way of life, that's a big claim. People say, well, hold on a second, it should tell me every aspect of life. You see, the dynamics of religion, perhaps in our modern world, although there are many benefits, one challenge is religion in our modern lifestyle has become compartmentalized. Compartmentalized means that for the Christian, church on Sundays is my religion, my dose of religion, my espresso shot of religion. For the Jew, on the Sabbath, Saturday, is my dose of religion. For the Muslim, it's Friday, for example, is my dose of religion, or maybe once a week or whatnot. But Islam's view of it was that from the moment I wake up to the moment I sleep, I'm a Muslim. In fact, the moment I sleep to the moment I wake up, I should be a believer. And in that, my work is part of my faith. My being good to my family is part of my faith. All of this is part of my faith. So when Imam Hussein alayhi salam rises, he's saying, I went for fi talab al-islah fi ummati jaddi. I went for talab al-islah fi ummati jaddi, to seek reformation in the nation of my grandfather. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam, before he went to the plains of Karbala, he gave his manifesto, he gave his statement. Why am I going? Amar bil ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar is not being upheld. Nobody is promoting good and forbidding evil. And this nation needs reformation. Someone needs to awaken people so that they wake up. And similarly, we may find ourselves in a similar situation in the sense that, are we as a community here, nationally, globally, awake or not? Do we do Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar first internally within ourselves, in the right akhlaq, in the right manners? And what is the reformation that's happening? That's why I've been harping on this term of transformation and reformation being our metrics. To try to see if people feel that the mosque, the Hussainiyah, the Imam Bargah is adding tremendous value to their life, perhaps we would not need to do fundraising. Perhaps people would be saying, here's my wallet, take it, get what you need. But the question we need to be asking, by the way, it's going on everywhere. So the question is, for example, if your child gets into an Ivy League school, you don't say, where am I going to get the funds? You find out a way to get those funds. You may borrow it, you may take a loan. They got to go to Princeton, they got to go to Harvard, they got to go to Stanford, XYZ. Because you have a perceived value of that institution in your mind. Even though you know that perhaps that same education you can get somewhere else, but the credential that that university institution gives your child is second to none, and it opens up a lot of doors that they wouldn't have otherwise. Similarly, the question that people are asking is, My time is valuable. I'm working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I don't have that much time. So what value is the mosque adding? And oftentimes, if your paradigm and you're coming from a worldview where the Qur'an is the final word, where you absolutely believe in God, and you sort of inherited a religious framework, so you're going to say, okay, I have to be here because my parents were harping on this. My religion, this is very important to me. But if you grow up in a society such as this, religion is important, but it's not the most important thing, as the data I presented the other night. That religion is one bucket amongst many buckets for young people in America. So what is the solution? That's the first point. Imam Hussein rose for reformation to protect the religion of Islam, the deen of Islam. Now come to the next point. I asked a question at the beginning, and that question was, we said in the first nights that the sixth Imam said, when it came to shirk and ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah, they were one and the same. You remember this? And we said that why is it, this was a question that we left open, that why is it that shirk and ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah are one and the same? Ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah and shirk are one of the major sins in Islam. Major sins, where the Imam says the canonical sins, amongst them he says shirk and ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah. Ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah meaning leaving a place where you are able to practice your religion to go to a place where you are no longer practicing your religion in a way that you are no longer adhering to your wajibat and no longer refraining from the muharramat, the haram things. And we didn't say, notice again, I'm repeating, I didn't say go from a Muslim country to a non-Muslim country. I said a place where you can practice your faith to a place where you're no longer able to practice. And we gave the example of Hamad al-Sindi, where the Imam said, if you're raising the zikr of the Qur'an and the Ahlul Bayt, that's also a good migration. But as long as you're doing that, if you're not doing that, then you have to question. So what's beautiful about this is you can correct your sale. But what is it that makes ta'arrub ba'd al-hijrah and shirk one and the same? And when you ask scholars, you may find that idols may not only be those idols that are in the mandir. Idols may not only be those idols that are physically made out of clay. Idols can also be ideological idols that I have in my heart and my mind, that I give precedence to over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's exactly what you find in Karbala. Those people who are fighting on the other side against Imam Hussein. Do you know, if you read the history of Karbala, maybe if life permits, I'll tell you the whole story of Karbala. The whole history of what led up to Karbala is exactly like our time today. There's no different. The same themes, just the actors that change. So those people, there were some people who were companions who were saying that, I can't fight because I see Muslims on both sides. By the way, till this day, there are people who say there was a battle between Muslims and you can't judge. Imam Hussein versus Yazid. There are certain people who say this. So the people on Yazid's army, they were quote unquote praying, they were quote unquote fasting, they were reading the Quran, they were hafiz of the Quran, they were Muslim, so to speak, quote unquote. So how would you know? I mean, obviously we don't accept them as Muslim, but I'm saying is in the view of people, they were perceived as Muslims. But they had idols. That's the statement that I was bringing your attention to a few nights ago when Imam Hussein said, when Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad said, you want to know if he's alive or dead? I'll tell you. Loot the tents of the women and children. And Imam Hussein said, إِن لَمْ يَكُنْ دِينٌ وَلَا تَخَافُونَ الْمَعَادِ فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. If you have no religion and you don't believe in the hereafter and the day of judgment, at least be free in this world. What was Imam Hussein saying? Those people were so entranced and they were worshipping those idols of their materialism, of the land of Ray, of the property, of the position of power, of all of those things that they thought they had been promised, that it intoxicated them so much that they were willing to kill Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So Imam Hussein said, you are not free. Why? Because you are a slave to your desires. Your desires have shackled you. So true freedom is to remove those shackles of materialism, of somebody coming to me and buying me out. You want an example that happened that time and still going on? Samara bin Jundub. Samara bin Jundub was a person who was a person of hadith. He used to quote the hadiths like Abu Hurairah and others. Samara bin Jundub, everyone had something that was there. So he comes to Muawiyah. Muawiyah has a dialogue with him. And Muawiyah comes to me and says, look, I want you to say that this verse of the Qur'an that is about the munafiqeen, I want you to write a hadith that says this is about Ali ibn Abi Talib. And I want you to write that verse that was revealed on the night of Hijrah, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, that was revealed in honor of Ali ibn Abi Talib, that he slept in the bed of Rasulullah. I want you to write that was actually not for Ali. I want you to write that was for Abdurrahman ibn Munjim, who killed Ali. Said, I can't do this. It's unjust. Someone have injured themselves. I can't do that. That's impossible. How can I do that? It's illogical. I can't do it. He says, I'll give you 100,000 dirham. There's no way. It's unjust. I can't. 200,000. Can't do it. 300,000. No. 400. I can't do this. 500,000. Give me the pen. He wrote it. He got bought out. Everyone has a price, seemingly. Not everyone, but many people. And you will find this in the history of Islam. The reason we hold on to the path of the Ahlul Bayt is because you cannot, the same way that Christianity was changed in the 14th century, in its 14th century, and we are in the 14th century of Islam, they are in their, 2022, so to speak. By the way, it's off by 4 or 5. Biblical scholars say Jesus was not born in 0. There's an off error by that. But anyways, in their 14th century, there was the Protestant Reformation. You and I are in the 14th century of Islam. And do not be surprised if there's a reformation that ensues because of what people see in terms of these injustices that are happening till this day. Do you not see that the Sheikh of the Haram, so to speak, until yesterday he's saying that this person's kafir, that person's kafir, this person's that, and this person's that, and then the next day he's saying that this is all, everything is happening, it's all kosher, so to speak. And many people, they don't wake up and they don't realize that the religion's being changed in front of their eyes. And that's because of economics and politics. It's not religion. So these things people need to wake up to understand why Imam Hussein alayhi salam rose in order for that to happen. To make that consciousness awaken. So now coming to this question, do we need religion in the 21st century? Now, one of the questions that Karen Armstrong, who I've been mentioning in the previous nights, again, when I mention her name, it doesn't mean I agree with everyone. I hope we're on the same page right now. I don't agree with everything they say, number one. And number two, I'm just giving a reference point in terms of someone who has seen it from other perspectives. You'll notice I tried to reinforce the same point with 3 or 4 different approaches, modern as well as classical. So coming to this, Karen Armstrong says, she says, every time I sit in a cab in London, the taxi driver asks and come forward. There's a request to please come forward. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Every time I sit in a cab in London, the taxi driver asks me, what do you do? What's your job? What's your profession? And you can apply this in your world as an Uber or like a Lyft driver or something like that. But every time she sits in a car, someone comes and asks, the driver asks, what do you do? What's your profession? She says, I write about religion. She says, every time she sits in a cab in London, the same response comes, oh, religion. That's nonsense. Why? Because it's the number one cause of violence in history. All of them say almost the same thing. And so the question emerges, is religion the number one cause of violence? Number two, has religion given us any benefit in the long bend of society? Because here's the narrative. People come forward and say, if you go from the Magna Carta to the Declaration of Independence, you will find that all of those are secular documents. They have nothing to do with religion. Really. Magna Carta being the first document where people got rights as opposed to the kings and the rulers in Europe. And that influenced many documents after it, such as the Declaration of Independence. But the question emerges here is, did all of these things come out of nowhere? Or was the Magna Carta influenced by religious scripture in the Bible and the likes? Or was the Declaration of Independence actually influenced by these things? You and I, remember, we need to be very careful about these slogans that are put on us by society. Because if you repeat something that's even wrong enough times, people start believing it. And so it's very important to be careful about these narratives. I told you about solution to bad guys with guns is good guys with guns. We told you it's nonsense. The shooting in Texas made that clear. And many other types of narratives that are pushed on you, you need to really reflect and say, is this right or is this wrong? So now coming back to this narrative about the history of what's going on in religions, were religions the biggest cause of violence? And did religions have any benefits? Well, hold on a second. The Magna Carta was heavily influenced by scripture, by religion. The Declaration of Independence, I mentioned to you the other night, we were talking in the question and answer session, when Keith Ellison, Congressman Keith Ellison, was swearing in the first Muslim congressman, what did he say? He said, I want to swear in on the Qur'an because I'm a Muslim, not on the Bible. What an amazing country that you and I live in, that they accommodated him. They went to the Library of Congress, the largest library in the world, and they brought a copy of the Qur'an, which was 200 years old. And it had written on it the letters TJ. And that Qur'an specifically belonged to Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, and he swore in on that Qur'an. And so what you realize is the founding fathers of America had a relationship with Islam. In fact, Thomas Jefferson had 2 copies of the Quran, one which he bought as a law student, and his library burnt. Then he bought a second copy after his library burnt again. He was looking for wisdom from the other faiths of the world. So one argument is tort law in America, civil law, is perhaps influenced by Islamic law in some context. There's an argument for this. So Islam was not against. In fact, in the early days of Islam, there was an argument, can a Muslim be the president of the United States? 200 years ago, presidents, founding fathers. And they all categorically said, absolutely, a Muslim can be president of the United States. But if we don't know these things, it's our job to know them and to share them with others. That's why I mentioned the book, Thomas Jefferson's Qur'an. I highly recommend you read it. It tells you the whole history of Islam and the founding fathers. So when we say that religion has no benefit today, well, we're forgetting that a lot of the documents that we have that govern our world today were influenced by religious documents, number one. Number two, when you look at violence and this question of, yes, there is a fair argument here, because when you look at the Inquisition, the violence that was done on scientists by the church, when you look at, for example, the Crusades, for example, when you look at the Protestants and Catholics fighting in Europe for decades and centuries, people say that this was all because of religion. By the way, you also have to read history. People say the Crusades were Christians against Muslims. That's not exactly true. If you read the history of the Crusades, the Crusaders who came for, by the way, the word infidel was first used by the Pope in describing Muslims. I don't know if you know that historically. The Pope during the Crusades said that these Muslims are infidels. Infidel is not a Muslim word, kafir as they translate it. It actually came from the church. Anyways, when they came, they were fighting against Muslims, no doubt. But even the Jews that lived in that area at that time, they told them either you convert to Christianity or you perish. So it was not just Christians against Muslims, it was Christians against Muslims and Jews and whoever else was there. So you need to be very careful about that. By the way, second side note that you may not know, when you say anti-Semite, I don't know if you know that Semitic includes Hebrew and Arabic. So by definition, anti-Semitic is Hebrew, anti-Hebrew, and anti-Arab. But we somehow forget that somehow in our dictionary definitions. It's very important for the parents in the next generation. I highly recommend that you encourage your children to learn debate and teach them debate. In debate, they will know what is a false dilemma. They will learn, for example, this notion of what is a red herring. They will know when someone is diverting from the attention. These are very important because when they're in school, someone may ask them and they may not know how to discuss these things. What's an example of a false dilemma? False dilemma is you're either with us or against us. A good debater knows that there's many other options. You can open many other doors. That person opens 2 doors in front of you, so I can open several other doors. I can be with you or against you. I can be sometimes with you, sometimes against you. I'm neither with you, neither against you. I can be Switzerland. I don't need to. So you need to know these things. So it's very important to understand the history as well as understand how do we respond to some types of things that people may say to us. So yes, there was violence that happened in the Crusades and many things. Shias and Sunnis fighting throughout history. It definitely happened, no doubt. But was religion the cause? The statement that religion is the main cause of violence implies that if I remove religion from the equation, there should be no more violence. That's the implication of the statement. But is that the case? What's the answer? The answer is the 20th century. The 20th century saw movements such as the Bolsheviks in Russia around World War I. Millions of people killed. Was that in the name of religion? How about communist China? Was that in the name of religion? Anti-religion. That millions of people killed. World War I. Was that in the name of religion? World War II. Was that in the name of religion? Today, what's going on? So the idea that religion is the cause is not right, because for many people of faith across the globe, the religion is what causes them and leads them to be more kind, more just, more compassionate, more charitable. In fact, when I was in London, they had stats that showed that the Muslim community was the most charitable in that. Are Muslims some superior race? No. It was just that their belief system, the concept of sadaqah, which in Hebrew is zadaqah, almost the same word, is part of that faith that you have to give charity. It's part of what you are supposed to do as a person of faith. So our faith inspires us to give. And remember the verse that I recited a few nights ago, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will never achieve righteousness until you give away from that which you love. Meaning, we have to make some sacrifice. Everyone's sacrifice may be different. For someone, it may be time. Remember, I mentioned in the previous nights about the languages of love and affection. There's different modalities for different people. Similarly, for sacrifice, there are different things. For you, your time may be valuable. For some people, time is very valuable, and it is very valuable. For some, it's their wealth. For some people, it's something else. And so we need to be very cognizant of that. So the answer to that is religion was used as a pawn in the game of politics and economics throughout history. But today, now, religion is not as strong as it used to be. People are using other mechanisms to abuse and use and distort at the first level. This is the first element of the equation. Number two, and this is especially important for our next generation, is science and technology are amazing. Always be careful of anyone who tells you to stay away from science and technology. Science and technology, if you read the bend of history, science and technology will run you over and it will be as if you don't exist. That's how powerful they have been in the grand scope of things. In fact, they say there were two arguments that led Islam to decline. There's a debate among scholars. That the golden era was 800 to 1100 AD. Why did Islam decline? They say two fatwas. One fatwa, they say, was the fatwa that was given by Ghazali on the pressure of Nizam al-Mulk. This is what they say. Nizam al-Mulk, not the Hyderabad, the Indian one, the Persian one. And he forced this. Remember, I gave that line of poetry, Sheikh and Shah, whenever, and sometimes the Sheikh and Shah become one at times, but the Sheikh and the Shah put the pressure on the Sheikh to write the fatwa. What did he say? Mathematics is the work of the devil. That led to one graph. The second, they say, was the fatwa in the Ottoman era against the printing press. This is what they say. And the printing press was the internet of its time. And they missed that wave. So it's very important to make sure that we are up with the times of. There's another request, please. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If you could please come forward. Another Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So science and technology are very important. But remember one thing, science technology is extremely important, but at the same time, science and technology does not tell us about morality. If science and technology is not controlled by the forces of, for example, religion, the good aspects of religion, positive aspects of it, of morality, thou shalt not kill, as it is in the Ten Commandments, it leads to an environment where there's Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the likes, and killing of many people en masse without any justice. So it's important to have some moral compass that tells you that no matter how powerful you are, you still have to use things right and not use them the wrong way. And that's one element of religion. Another argument for religion is the following. And that's where I really want you to pay attention to. And that is especially pertinent for our community in the future of our community. And that is this. We know that our society has an impact on us. I've been mentioning this in the previous nights, whether we realize it or not. And living in the West, there's many benefits. Sometimes you become more open-minded. Maybe you become less judgmental. Maybe you become many other things. Also, at the same time, there may be some things that you and I are not aware of. So there's one book that I invite you to really think about and really read and really consider. And that's a book that was written in 1897, 125 years ago. And it was written by a man who's one of the fathers of sociology. Sociology is the systematic study of society. And this man, his name was Emile Durkheim. Emile Durkheim is one of the fathers of sociology, and he studied at the University of Paris, also called the Sorbonne. That's where Dr. Ali Shariati studied as well. At the Sorbonne, he was studying, and after that he became a professor. Durkheim, he realized something that he was noticing. He was living in France at the turn of the Industrial Revolution. And he was looking at Europe as it was changing in front of his eyes from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy. And what he noticed at that time, 125 years ago, that's still true today, is he looked at Italy, he looked at England, and he looked at the Netherlands or Holland. And at that time, Italy was the most agricultural, the most farming-based culture. And in the middle was the United Kingdom, which was in between. And the most industrial developed economy at the time was Holland or the Netherlands. He found an interesting trend. He found that when he went from Italy to England to Holland, and he was looking at his own France as well, he says, as industrialization increases in society, as industrialization increases, the suicide rate increases in society. This was true 125 years ago, and it's still true till today. That is, if you go to South Korea, you'll find the same trend. If you go to the developed, every time a country becomes developed, it also gets higher rates of suicide. The book was called The Suicide. It's called, in English, it's been translated as suicide. So why? I thought industrialization is good. Yes, there's benefits. But it's side effects. Remember, if your doctor or your physician prescribes you medicine, like cold medicine, it will maybe benefit your cold symptoms, but it may make you drowsy, a side effect. If you have, for example, you're taking certain medications, it may help your cholesterol or this, that, and the other, but it may have a side effect of, for example, dry mouth or fatigue or something else. Similarly, there are many benefits of industrialization, but there are also some major costs. I told you when we talked about Adam Smith. Adam Smith said you can produce a lot more if rather than having each person build one chair and one table, you just have them put in one screw. You devise the labor, division of labor. That the positive is you can make a lot more stuff. The negative is that people don't have meaning. They're like, what do? I just put those screws. So there's a loss of meaning. And that's what's the biggest challenge of the 21st century. People have a tremendous loss of meaning. Like, why am I here? What's the purpose? Why am I doing this? Why am I running this rat race? What's happening? So it's very important for us to work on this. If you want a challenge for what you should do for the next, add value, you want to know how you can add value to the next generation, help them find their career paths, what their calling is in life, what they should do in light of Islam, in light of modern science. One technique you can use is a Japanese technique. It's called ikigai. It's a Japanese technique where you draw 4 circles and you put in those things which are your benefit. For example, what do you love in one circle? If you don't know what a Venn diagram is, you can ask your kids. They'll probably tell you what it is. So your intersection of these circles tells you something. You have this circle, and in it you write, what do you love? Then in the next circle, you write, like, what is it that you can do that can provide value to others? And you go down the list, for example. What is something that you would do, the third circle, that people would compensate you for? And the final one is, what are you good at? And another way that I like to say this is, if you put your heart and mind to it, what could you be the best in the world at? Heart and mind meaning you put the work in. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given each individual on this planet a unique set of skills. Unique set of skills. And what I mean is, yes, other people may have similar skills, but the combination of skills that you have, no one else has. And it's important to make sure that we help the next generation benefit from that as much as possible. Notice I didn't say just do what you love and what you like. That's not a complete comprehensive answer because it may not be viable as a solution. Think about these things. Help people find their solutions. If parents are noticing that their kids are finding what their calling is in life, then they'll be like, whoa, I need to come here. I need to support it. I'm getting value. And in that, you give the doses of Islam. That's how Rasulullah did it. Didn't Rasulullah say, you want a better afterlife? You want to go to Jannah? Okay, do this in this life. There's an incentive. Hereafter incentive and in this world incentive. What was this world incentive? Usually it was like food or something like clothing or charity or something. There were both types of incentives. We have to figure out incentives. And you may say, do you know how powerful incentives are? Just a very quick side note. Poor economics, I mentioned it in the question and answer session yesterday. Poor economics by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther DeFlo. They won the Nobel Prize in economics, husband and wife at MIT. And they said, for example, how do you solve the problem of TB, tuberculosis, in these types of countries? Although we've come a long way. In the 60s, it was like a death sentence. But now we have some cures. But people in rural localities in India, the treatment for this, the treatment program is about 6 months, I was told. And every week they have to come and get the treatment. But if you miss the treatment even 1 week, it's like you didn't do anything. You have to go back to zero. So they said, how do we make these people who are from rural villages complete their treatment? And they found that just giving them an incentive such as a teacup set that for you and I would maybe cost $10 or less, increased the probability of them completing the whole course of treatment by 33%. And so these are the types of things. If you and I remove suffering in terms of people suffering from TB or any other illness, don't you think that's part of Islam? That is, if we had a clinic here that gave treatment to people, regardless of caste, color, or creed, that's part of Islam. We sometimes have separated Islam as just namaz, and that's important, no doubt. But young ones are saying that stop, let's not just talk about Islam, let's do Islam. That's the part of the active verb of Islam. And that's what we really need to get back to. So Durkheim identified that the suicide rate increases when industrialization rises. So what did he say? He said that this is what happens. But by the way, mind you, suicide is the tip of the iceberg problem. Remember the Titanic, which I mentioned a couple of nights ago, that there were 3 Shia sisters on there? The Titanic, they were in the middle of the night, and they moved away from that part of the ice that was above the surface. But they still sank. Why? Because 90% of the mass of an iceberg is below the surface. Similarly, when someone attempts to take their life, that is some percentage above the surface. You're not seeing all those people who are suffering from anxiety, depression, XYZ. You fill in the blank of the other challenge that may be going on. I believe, especially in light of the Stanford study that came out last year that I alluded to, that said that when they looked at, you can look this up yourself, the study from Stanford that looked at young people of faith in America, and they found that there are people, for example, with respect to this notion, the Jewish community, the Protestant community, the Catholic community, and the Muslim community, when they looked at the numbers, they found that in terms of attempted rates of suicide amongst young people in America, the lowest number was amongst the Jewish community, 3.6%. The next percentage was the Protestant community, 5%. The Catholic community was 6%. The Muslim community had the highest percentage at 7.9%. When they adjusted for other factors, the attempted rate of suicide, they said, was 12%, double of the next demographic. It's not easy to be a Muslim in our world and society, especially a practicing one. Dr. Julie Hogan, Professor Julie Hogan, look at her research and her talk. She actually has a TED Talk. And she gives this TED Talk where she says, I walked with the Muslim hijab in the walls in the malls of Las Vegas in Nevada. She's a professor in Nevada. And she says that when I went with my friend, her experience as a non-Muslim wearing the hijab, she says, when I was going there to the restaurant, for example, people felt like they were making way for us. In fact, nobody wanted to sit at the table next to us. In fact, she said, we then went into the mall and people, for example, one child said, Mom, look, a ninja. And then furthermore, they walked down further, and then another group of white men were very aggressively, they made a gesture that was very aggressive. You're seeing what's going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico right now, right? This is something that we need to be very cognizant and mindful of. My concerns are not to fearmonger, but we need to figure out how to work together. If we were strategic and we were working together, we would have an evacuation plan or something for those brothers and sisters to protect them, or some system in place that was not reactive but proactive, that before incidents like this happen, we could engage to protect these lives. Believe we need to do this. By the way, remember, in America, we are not at odds with the Christian community. We are not at odds with the Jewish community. We are not at odds with the Hindu community. We are not at the odds with the Sikh community. We are all collectively at odds with Jahl, ignorance. Why? Because when the Gurdwara gets attacked in Wisconsin, people thinking that it's a Muslim center, that ignorant person doesn't even know these people are not Muslim. They just see a turban. Today it's them, tomorrow it's some of our scholars who are wearing a turban. They don't know. We have a job to make sure that everyone's rights are respected and everyone has a fair shot in society. That's part of our responsibility as Muslims in America in the 21st century. Otherwise, people are going to say, we can't just sit in cocoons anymore in our buildings. We've got to figure out, how does our narrative fit into the broader narrative of our fabric of society, because we're Americans. And if you have a problem with that, just ask your kids, well, what language do they think in? What language do they exist in? And that's really what's important. You shouldn't be afraid of that. So now coming back to what Durkheim was saying, is that's a tip of the iceberg problem. So based on this, I believe our community should be at the forefront of helping mental health challenges in the broader community. We should have mental health hospitals the same way they were there in the history of Baghdad, in the Islamic Empire. They had the first mental health hospitals on record. They used to have physicians there. They used to have nurses there. They used to have therapists there. In fact, they used to give stipends to those people who were there. That's how humane it was at that time. Perhaps we can be known as that community that gives and adds that value to society. Because if you remember nothing else, remember, the Jewish community, when they came to America, they were heavily discriminated against. Do you know how they overturned it? There were several things, but one thing that they did was, at that time, 120 years ago in New York and in America, if you could afford it, a doctor or a physician came to your house. But if you could not afford it, you either gave some home remedies and you prayed to God. The Jewish community set up hospitals. At that time, there were hospitals. Today, we would call them clinics. They set up hospitals in Brooklyn and other parts of New York, and they gave treatment to people regardless of caste, color, or creed. When they did this, the people who were making fun of them just yesterday, they said, hold on a second. Our kids get sick and they go to Jewish hospitals and clinics. If they leave our neighborhoods, we die, our kids die. It changed the whole narrative. So you and I need to see, we're already in our pockets. The Muslim community is doing a lot, believe me. But the question is, are we doing it collaboratively together and showing, not because we want to show that we're great, but just so that people understand this is the value. Because people are saying, oh, Muslims, what's the value they're adding to society? They're adding tremendous value. It just may not be unified and put together. Remember the argument of the sugar lobby that I told you a few nights ago. The sugar lobby in America is not huge and massive, but it's very organized. And because it's organized, it's able to control the price of sugar and make us eat a lot more high fructose corn syrup than we would, and many other things. In America, you just have to be organized politically. So what is the next phase of our community? We need to make sure that we take care of the 4 square model that I mentioned internally in our communities. That is the family structure, the madrasa, the mimbar, and the company that you keep internally. And externally, we need to begin working on those works that many of you already have begun in pockets, but we need to formalize it locally and nationally. And that is the work on academia, finance, politics, and media, these 4 areas. This is how you are able to build influence in society for a better world. That is, we need people to go into academia to go to the top. We need people who are in finance to make sure that they are supporting these projects, because we need finance to fund all these projects. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You need people who are in politics. If politics was wrong, Rasulullah would never endeavor in politics. Ali would never endeavor in politics. Politics is a vehicle to try to change the paradigm. Yes, there are some corrupt politicians. I don't disagree. But we need to get active in this. And the next level is, of course, media, because media controls oftentimes perceptions in society. So we need to understand this, because that's how the world works. If you've understood anything from the Ukraine-Russia conflict, regardless of what side you're on, remember, what we're seeing right now as unfold in the Middle East, we've seen people die innocently, people in Afghanistan. How can we do something about that? Remember, I already said, we're not in this boat because it's just Muslim. If the tables were turned, our principle requires, even if it's a non-Muslim, we have to stand up. But how do we do something? What you noticed in the Ukraine conflict was when someone on the Ukrainian side, a widow, a lady lost her husband, they publicized and they publicly televised the trial. It's very emotional. Like, they're showing that this Russian soldier had killed this woman's husband. And she's saying, why did you do this? That emotional element has a big impact in changing the paradigm. Somehow in our world, there are 2 sets of blood. One blood seems to be more valuable than others. And we need to make sure that the world knows that all blood is equal. Everyone has a fair shot. Nobody should be mistreated. That when 1 million people die in Afghanistan, everyone's heart should beat. 1 million people die in Europe, same way. 1 million people die there, we should also cry. It should be the same, equal plane. That's what we need to work on to get to the paradigm. So what did Durkheim say in terms of that? Durkheim said that he believed there were 5 reasons as to why this happened in society. What were the reasons? He said, number 1, the reasons why, in his view, society industrialization was leading to higher rates of suicide. He said, number 1 is society is shifting from communal to individual. He said, although there are benefits to individuality, in individuality you get into Harvard, Princeton, Yale, MIT, whatever, you go. Fantastic. You maximize your potential as an individual. And you don't necessarily look at others. In a communal society, you look at the community. There's pros and cons. There's a lot of benefits of individuality, by the way. For example, if you're at work and you eat halal or you eat vegetarian, vegan, they will accommodate you. It's beautiful. In an individualistic society. In a communal society, then we have dal chawal, you want it, take it, don't, see you later. That's the downside. But there's also another aspect. And what psychologists and sociologists, I should say is, in an individualistic society, stay with me, it's very important. In an individualistic society, if you make it by society's standards, meaning if you become Elon Musk, if you become Jeff Bezos, if you become Bill Gates, if you become Warren Buffett, if you become the wealthiest person in society, society says you made it because you worked hard. But the opposite of that puts you in a very cruel place, meaning that you didn't make it. If you don't become that person, society says you didn't make it because you didn't try. That's a very dangerous narrative, because the graveyards of Silicon Valley are filled with companies and startups who were the same idea, just a little early, a little late, whatever it was. Uber, right before Uber, there was a company called Taxi Magic. Exact same thing 2 years earlier. Didn't work. Why? Timing. I know a brother in our community who was on Wi-Fi, who had come up with Wi-Fi 2 years before it became normal. Sometimes there's a lack of maturity in the market. You have to be at the right time, at the right place. So if we say that you made it because you worked hard, that discredits so many other people who worked really hard. That leads people to become very unhappy in their mind, number 1. Number 2, excessive hope, not normal hope. Hope is good. Hope is very important. Don't get me wrong. Excessive hope. What does he mean? Example of this is the Paris effect. Have you been to Paris? I've been to Paris. I'm sure many of you have been to Paris. You've seen the Eiffel Tower. You've seen Champs-Élysées. You've seen all of these things. Japanese tourists, when they leave, they have this vision that they will leave Tokyo and they will go to Paris and they will see the Eiffel Tower and it will be the most amazing experience of their life. They get on the plane, they land in Paris, they go up, they get out the metro, they get up, they close their eyes, they open, and they see the Eiffel Tower in front of them, and they fall into a deep depression. So what? This is just a tower. We have like 50 of these in Tokyo. And this is one of those examples of what Seneca says, man suffers more in his mind than in reality. So this is the second element. Third element is the element of freedom, excessive freedom. The excessive freedom element is something that has to do with Dr. Barry Schwartz. Dr. Barry Schwartz, in his book, The Paradox of Choice, says he sent a few people into the market. When he sent them into the market, one group he said pick amongst these 4 cereals. The other group he said pick amongst these 20 cereals. First group said, he asked the first group, how many of you are happy with your decision? They all said we're happy. The second group he said, how many of you are happy with your decision after picking after the 20 out of the 20? And they all said if we had more time, we would pick more. Reality is, this is not about cereal, this is about life. Theodore Adorno was a sociologist and a philosopher who lived in the 1950s and 60s. From Europe, he moved to LA. And he said, do you know who he said the most dangerous man in the world was? Not my words, his words. He said the most dangerous man in the world at that time, he said, was Walt Disney. And he said the reason is because Walt Disney creates this fantasy that there's somebody out there that you have to go to, and Frozen, you have to go to Scandinavia and find this perfect person, you have to go to Australia and find this perfect. And so you spend your whole life trying to find this perfect person, and no perfect people exist. And so we live on this perpetual notion of excessive freedom. Freedom is very important, don't get me wrong. But excessive freedom, where we have all these different choices, we start thinking, oh, it's not good enough. We have the FOMO effect, you know, the fear of missing out effect. That's what ends up coming in. The fourth element of the equation is family structure declines in industrial economy. And the example of this is the Rosetto effect. The Rosetto effect is well known and well documented in cardiology and sociology. The Rosetto effect says that, look, Rosetto was a community in the 1950s and 60s in America. It's still there, a town in Pennsylvania. And they had half the rate of cardiovascular disease compared to the rest of the United States. And all the sociologists and cardiologists were like, well, what's going on here? They probably don't smoke and they probably don't eat fat or anything. And they looked at the data and they all smoked cigars and they all ate lard. Like, what's going on? Don't do that, by the way. There's more to the story. So then they went into the town, and when they went into the town, they found that these people had imported their culture from Rosetto, Italy to Rosetto, Pennsylvania in America. And so you had 3 generations living in one roof. You had people would get in their backyards every day and cook together, and they would all eat together. And they had a social network that was so powerful that it shifted the dynamics. It was causing them to live longer. The final thing that he says that may be leading to people becoming much unhappier in modern societies is the decline of religion. And he said, although he was not the most religious person himself, he said, we need religion now more than ever because of the meaning, the community, the dynamics that religion provides, the glue it is of society. We need it now more than ever. This was his argument. There's no more studies today from Harvard to FSU and everywhere in between that have found that people who attend, the question you may be asking, why should I come to the mosque once a week or twice a week? Why should I come? Studies have found that people who attend a religious gathering once a week, on average, are happier, healthier, and wealthier than those who do not. Because of the community. But now here's the caveat. If and only if there are good relations, communal relations amongst the community. And this is the kicker of the future of our community. This is where we have work to do. One quick story, and it's difficult. I know I'm with the time and with Masai work, we're going to go over. I'm after transformation. We have to, and you'll see what I'm about to say right now. We have different metrics that we're after, and everyone's on the same goal. We have to figure out a way to work together. There's a brother I met in Iraq. Please forgive me for what I'm about to say, but I'm really trying to fight for the future of our community. And I went to UK, and there was a brother from Iraq, and he said, Sayyid, you're always talking about development. I need to share something with you. I said, what is it? He said, my first job, when I left Iraq, I had to leave in a haste under the Ba'athist regime. I came to Germany. And I was an engineer in Iraq, but I had to find whatever job I could in Germany. And I got a job as a supermarket clerk. My job was procurement officer. I had to get all the supplies that stocked the shelves. And so I worked really hard at this job, and I worked very diligently at this job. And I negotiated so hard with the suppliers to get the best price to stock the shelves. And he said, I was doing the best. And eventually one day, the boss calls me into the office and he says, I have to let you go. I have to fire you. And so he said, look, you gave me a shot. I appreciate it. I really do. But look, I have no problem, just one thing. The economy is doing good, the business is doing good. You know that I'm the best employee that you've had. I've worked very hard. I just want to know an honest answer as to why. I'm not even going to contest it. I just want to know why. He said, you're absolutely right. Economy is good, business is good. You're the best at this job I've ever had. There's only one problem. So what's the problem? He said, the problem is you didn't realize our system. And our system is that I'm from the Jewish community. All my suppliers are from the Jewish community. When you negotiate hard with them, you hurt them. And I can't have that. We cannot have that in our system. If you go coast to coast, from Florida to Texas to Washington, and every state that I've been to, every state in our Shia community, I'm not saying other communities don't have this problem, but in our community, because we have that influence and we're in that sphere, every community has lawsuits. Shias against Shias. How are we going to build a community like this? How are we going to get to the next level? You're telling your kids, come to the masjid. Why? Because Islam is there. The kids come to the masjid, they say, Baba, there's no Islam here. I'm looking for Islam. There's no Islam. It's just plastered on the front Islamic center. There's no Islam inside. It's a cultural center. It's an ego center. It's an XYZ center. This is why the future of our community is at stake. And until and unless we come forward and solve this problem, we need to learn how to work together. Let's use this example right now. Timeliness is very important in this community, as it should be. And we have different varying metrics, but we always have to keep one thing in mind. What's the big picture? If we understand that, then we can work together. That person, that brother, that sister, they have the love of Imam Hussein in their heart, love Imam Ali in their heart. We can work together. We have to figure out a way. Otherwise, more communities are going to open up, more lawsuits are going to happen. We're going to build palaces, and they're going to end. I'll tell you, because I'm out of time, I'll tell you all that data very quickly and succinctly, or Tuesday. Tuesday we'll give all the wrap up. There's a lot to say. We have to solve this. Otherwise, we won't get your problem. Leaving it. Night is Shab Ashur. Told Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who's on the plains of Karbala. He says, Ala, hal min nasirin yansurna, hal min mughithin yughithuna, hal min dabin yudubbu an harami Rasulillah. Is there anyone to come to our assistance? Is there anyone to come to our aid? Is there anyone to come and help the women of Rasulullah? There was no response. The narrations say that Imam Hussein's alone, seemingly, and then there was a cry. At that moment in time, there's a cry in the tents. Imam Hussein runs back to the tents. He says, why is there a cry while I am alive? He says, they respond, they said, Imam al-Hussein, we would not, but when you cried out this istighasa, when you said, Hal min nasir yansurna, this child, Aliyun al-Asghar, threw himself from the cradle. At that point in time, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam says, perhaps I can get this child some water. Give this child to me. Give Aliyun al-Asghar, Abdullah al-Radi, give this child to me. At that point in time, the poet says in 2 lines, he says, Ye durre najaf hai, abhi yaqut banega. Ye durre najaf hai, abhi yaqut banega. Jis jhule mein jhula hai, wo tabut banega. Jis jhule mein khela hai, wo tabut banega. The poet says, this is durre najaf, the clear stone. It is about to become yaqut, the red stone. And that cradle in which this child has gone, that cradle is about to become a grave. What happened? Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he takes his child, he covers him, he takes him towards the battlefield. When he takes him towards the battlefield, the narrations say at that point in time, the enemy thinks that Imam Hussein has brought the Qur'an for peace. But at that moment when they see this, Imam Hussein removes the veil, he removes the covering. They see a 6-month-old child. When they see the 6-month-old child, at that point in time they say, the enemy on the other side, there was commotion amongst them. There were 2 parties amongst them. When these 2 parties, one said, what is going on? We did not know there were children in this camp. How is it that you are making them die of thirst? And the other said, no, let them be, let them suffer. At that point in time, the narrations say, when this happened, when this occurred, at that point in time, the narrations say, Imam al-Hussein looked at his son and he looked at the enemy. He says, perhaps you think that I am the cause and I'm the problem here. Fair enough. I will put this child on the ground and perhaps you can give him water yourself. I won't trouble you. This is the child of Imam al-Hussein. They are completely aligned. These 2 individuals. What does the poet says? The poet says, "Teeron ka samna hai aur muskura rahe hain." किस खानदान से हैं असगर बता रहे हैं और काबा बना रहे थे बेटा लिए इब्राहिम काबा बना रहे थे बेटा लिए इब्राहिम बाबा के साथ असगर काबा बचा रहे हैं. The poet says that this individual Ali Asghar, he is one of the companions of Imam Hussein. He's not just a child, because the arrows are coming and he's smiling. He's telling what families he's from. But not only that, Ibrahim and Ismail were building the Kaaba. Hussein and Asghar are saving the Kaaba. They are saving Islam. At that moment in time, the enemy begins to cry. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sees this. When he sees this, he says, Hurmala, the main archer, he says, Iqta kalamul Hussein, cut off the statement of Hussein. At that point in time, the narration says, Hurmala, he took a three-pronged arrow. Now, many people say, how can someone take a three-pronged arrow to kill a child? What you're really saying is that I would never do this. I believe you would never do this. But those people were barbarians. And still this day, there are barbarians. They wanted to do the worst to the heart of Imam al-Hussein. He took a three-pronged arrow. He let it go. At that point in time, the narrations say that the arrow pierced through the neck of Ali al-Asghar. The narrations say the arrow went min al-Uzn ila al-Uzn, from one ear until the other ear. The narrations say Abdullah Radi, Ali al-Asghar, he began to move his hands like a bird flaps its wings on the hands of Imam al-Hussein. At that point in time, Imam Hussein is holding his child. The narrations say the blood of Ali al-Asghar is in his hands. When the blood of Ali al-Asghar is in his hands, he wants to throw it towards the ground. They say Jibreel comes, and Jibreel says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, Imam Hussein, if you throw this towards the ground, no crops will ever grow. He wishes to throw it towards the skies. He says that if you throw this towards the skies, no rain will ever fall. Imam Hussein, they say he put the blood on his beard, and he said, I will meet my grandfather Rasulullah in this state. He takes Ali Asghar and he begins to go back towards the tents. When he begins to go back towards the tents, according to narration, how is he to tell a mother? At that point in time, he gets to the foot of the tent. Allah knows how he got to the foot of the tent. When he gets there, at that point in time, when he gets there, he calls Rabab. He says, Rabab, take your amana, take your trust. Perhaps Rabab thought that the child had gotten water. She comes to the door in the foot of the tent, and then Imam Hussein removes the cover. What does she see? She sees her child whose neck has been pierced. She just looks and she says one moment, oh my child, are little children like you, are they pierced in this way? She began to cry. Narrations say Imam Hussein alayhi salam wished to bury his child behind the tent. We cannot take the masahib of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The Ahlul Bayt say you could not bear what went to us. At that point in time, the narration say Imam Hussein went behind the tents. When he went behind the tents, he took Ali al-Asghar in his hands. When he took Ali al-Asghar in his hands, how is he to dig this grave? The sand is very hot. How does he put the child on the ground? Do you know what some of the narrations say? They say Imam Hussein took his sword that was covered and he took it out to dig the hole of the grave. And on the other side, he took Ali Asghar to his chest. He held him to his chest on one side and he began to dig the grave with the other hand. He put the child in the ground. Allah knows how he closed the grave of Ali al-Asghar. Ajrukum ala Allah. Ajrukum ala Allah. I've finished. I'm leaving everything. The narrations say that after Ashura on Sham Ghariban, they began to take the heads of the Shuhada and put them on spears. Do you know what they say? They say that some of the army men in Yazid's army, they began to say, we saw Hussein bury his child behind the tent. And then Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad said, I will give a reward to anyone who brings me that head. At that point in time, there was a mother who was standing by the foot of the tent, Rabab. She was looking on as the enemy began to take their spears and they began to plunge it into the ground of Karbala. Rabab raised her hands towards the heavens. She says, my Lord, protect my baby. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. صلى الله عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة الرسالة. صلى الله عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي.
وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين معتم الحسين يا حسين يا
Hussein, Ya 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 Hussein,
Ali asghar din raat rulaye hai teri yaad Ali asghar din raat rulaye hai teri yaad Ali asghar din raat rulaye hai teri yaad Ali asghar din raat rulaye तू पास है बाबा के तू पास है बाबा के मादर कहाँ जाए हाय तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए ये माँ तेरी यादों को दिल में लिए बैठी है जलते हुए चूल्हे की एक रात समय की है अब तेरे बगैर असगर अब तेरे बगैर असगर कैसे जीऊं हाय तेरी याद अली दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए जब से मेरे बेटा तेरा साथ जो छूटा है एक दिन मुझे असगर एक साल के जैसा है अब चल तुझे माँ से अब चल तुझे माँ से अल्लाह मिलाए तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए लिपटा लूं सकीना को तो थोड़ा सुकून पाऊं लेकिन बंदे हाथों से कैसे उसे लिपटाऊं ऐसा ना कोई मादर ऐसी ना कोई मादर मजबूर हो है तेरी बात अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी बात अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए आवाज़ शाहे वाला बस जुल्म ही झेले हैं अब मेरी मदद आओ असगर हम अकेले हैं तुम पोते हो हैदर के तुम पोते हो हैदर के ज़हरा के हो जाए तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए आबिद भी अली है और तुम भी हो अली असगर वो चौक में जगना है तुम कौन हो अंदर अब हमको मसाइब से अब हमको मसाइब से कौन आके छुड़ाए मेरी याद अली अकबर दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली अकबर दिन रात रुलाए शबीर बनाते थे जब तेरी लहज असगर बस मैं ही समझती हूँ जो गुजरी मेरे दिल पर अल्लाह की सीमा पर अल्लाह की सीमा पर ये बात न लाए तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली असगर दिन रात रुलाए देखे मुझे ये किस्मत क्या और दिखाती है गोदी की मेरी उजड़ी और मांग भी उजड़ी है हर जुल्मों से तम टूटा हर जुल्मों से तम टूटा पर तुम नहीं आए तेरी याद अली दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली दिन रात रुलाए तुम तो मेरे सीने पर सोते थे अली असगर सोती थी सकीना तो बाबा के सीने पर है बहन और तुम ऐसी है बहन और तुम हो पार में आए तेरी याद अली दिन रात रुलाए हाय तेरी याद अली दिन रात रुलाए Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya 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 Hussein, है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है हर सब पे शुक्राना हर सब पे शुक्राना ज़ैनब लबों पर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैनब का खुला सर है एक गिरी आए खून की जाती नहीं खाली सजाद की आंखों को देखा ही नहीं खाली या खून है आंखों में या खून है आंखों में या शाम का मंदिर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है लटका गड़े गुफा पर देखा है कोई भाषा क्यों चौक से मैं मिल गिरी गया सरदारा बाप लहू से क्यों बाप लहू से क्यों ज़ैना कभी कर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना सर है ये शोर का है मातम सदा का है वही जो बचाए जो घर जो बलाशा है या है सर भर या है सर भर या ज़ैना चादर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है निशान गरीबात पुरहोश बया तक बाजार से गुफा तक दरबार से जिंदा तक मेरे तमाचे हैं मेरे तमाचे हैं और शाम की दोपहर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है टकराती है सर अपना जाने को कहाँ जाए मासूम सकीना को अशरार के मौत आए उसके लिए जिंदा में उसके लिए जिंदा में बस खाक का बिस्तर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर 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 है मुझ पे शुक्राना मुझ पे शुक्राना ज़ैना लबों पर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है बाजार है पत्थर है ज़ैना खुला सर है या हुसैन 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 Hussein, 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 Hussein.
دلم کس نکند دلبری با دلبر من جز دلم کس نکند دلبری با دلبر من دلبرش بازی کند بر سر نی با سر من دلبرش بازی کند بر سر نی با سر من یاربی نشت بلا یاربی نشت بلا که طرف خانه ما کس ندان که عروسی بوری یا که ازا هرچه دارند تماشای زلفت ریزم هرچه دارند تماشای زلفت ریزم جایزم در قدم سر و جان بریزم کرده پرخون جگر دست ازل کام مرا زده نقاش ازل عزم مرا رنگ مرا بعد من خواهر من حافل سالار منی در پس پرده غیب‌شاهد اسرار منی شاهد غارت و غارتگر گلدار منی شاهد غارت و غارتگر گلدار منی زیر شمشیر و سنان غالب دیوار منی سوز و غم یا ساده و بازی نیست سوز و غم ما ساده و یک بازی نیست سوز و غم ما ساده و یک بازی نیست هر که دارد غم جان غایب جان بازی نیست تا ملامت نکشی عشق نزند حلق به در نشود رنگ تو لعبها نخوری خون جگر کی کنم فکر از این فرح پر از نقش و نگاه کی کشم منت از این طارم فیروز صبا کی کشم منت از این طارم فیروز صبا صحبت از بریدن درز قفا شمشیر صحبت از بریدن درز قفا شمشیر صحبت از بردن آب از گلو نبچیر خجلی بر بکشیم به مسلخ تهدید من و 72 پروانه در آتش تصویر سقف آسمان ز بیداد آتش می‌سوزد ز حیا فلک به تقوا می‌دوزد تماشاگر عقل است و در فهم نه تماشاگه عقل و نه در فهم و جنون قمرم کشته به دریا زد و شد تشنه برون سر و جان ما همه مشتاق وصالند و غمم یک به یک رقص کنان پشته تیغ ستمم نه چه چیزها که غمش ها نشوی قابل یار نه چه شیدها که غمش ها نشوی قابل یار گلی در باغ جهان رو که برون کرد بیخوان چه کنم با ستم و گردش این برخ حسود که چنین جرعه خونی به نامم زده رو به خدا دی ما این سمه و داده نبود ورنه این صبر و تحمل به خدا داده نبود آن همه دعوت و پیمان تو ای روح چه شد خرج یک خنده و یک فکره پنهان که شد آنچه من بینگرم لایق دیدار تو نیست عکس معشوقه ما در و دیدار تو نیست جز دلم پس نکند دلبری با جز دلم پس نکند دلبری با جز دلم پس نکند دلبری با
Hussein, 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 Hussein.
امشب میخوام با شما نوای میخوام اول بس شب میخوام با شور و نوا کربلا میخوام بلبل به سجود نماز شده کربلا میخوام بلبل به سجود نمازم شده کربلا میخوام بلبل بلبل کربلا این کن بلبل کربلا این کن بلبل نینوای بلبل نینوای کربلا این کن نینوای این کن شب میخونم شور و نوا کربلا میخوام بلبل شب میخونم با شور و نوا بلبل به سجود نمازم شده کربلا میخوانم بلبل بلبل کربلا این کن بلبل کربلا این کن بلبل نینوا این کن بلبل نینوا این کن پس نفسم شکل کربلاست کربلا میخوام بلبل پس نفسم شکل کربلاست کربلا میخوام بلبل به من فقط اون بده تلاس کربلا میخوانم بلبل به من فقط اون بده تلاس کربلا میخوانم بلبل بلبل کربلا این کن بلبل کربلا این کن بلبل بلبل بس کربلا این کن بس کربلا این کن بس نینوا این کن بس نینوا این کن بس کربلا این کن بس کربلا این کن بس نینوا این کن بس نینوا این کن
ماه میگوید حسین
شيعيتي يا شيعيتي ما تطفى جمرة لوحيتي يا شيعيتي يا شيعيتي ما تطفى جمرة لوحيتي أنا هذا نظل وتحيدر هذا نظل وتحيدر جدي النبي خير الورى هذا نظل وتحيدر جدي النبي خير الورى أمي الوديعة الطاهرة راح أروي حالة مصيبتي يا شيعتي يا شيعتي ما تطفى جمرة لوعيتي يا شيعتي يا شيعتي ما تطفى جمرة لوعيتي هذا يضل ويتحيدر هذا يضل ويتحيدر جدي النبي خير الورى أمي الوديعة فاطمة أمي الوديعة الطاهرة راح اروي حالة مصيبتي يا شيعتي يا شيعتي ما تطفى جمرة لوعيتي أنا اللي ذي حق غدار من العطش كبد فطر أنا اللي ذي حق غدار من العطش كبد فطر صابا وجبينه بالحجر صابا وجبيني بالحجر ودم راسي خضب شبيتي ودم راسي خضب شبيتي يا شيعتي يا شيعتي ما تطفى جمرة لوعيتي هذا الجيرة علي وسيده هذا الجيرة علي وسيده عقبي الحجر قوسي العيده سهمي المثلث سدده سهمي المثلث سدده هسه مقطع كبدي هسه مقطع كبدي يا شيعتي يا شيعتي ما تطفى جمرة لوعيتي
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين علي الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين علي حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. صلاة المغرب إن الصلاة ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض ولا طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم العظيم. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية عافية الدنيا والآخرة. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد.
بسم زيارة سلام الله عليه.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد.
أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه عليه السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to invite Sister Zara Esfahani, if she is around. She can come to the front. She has written a letter to Imam Hussein. She said, I want to read a letter to Imam Hussein. Because at 7:30, hardly any of you showed up. So I said, you know, this is not good. I want to have more people show up. I want to have read the letter right now, okay? Please welcome over Salawat. So Zara, I'm going to get you in the video for a second. Give me a couple minutes to get set up, okay? Just up here, stand here. The camera on. 1 second. Second. 1 second.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zahra Noor Esfahani. I am 7.5 years old, and I'm going to be reading a letter to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You like it? Dear Imam Hussein alayhi salam, I know a lot about you, but I've never met you. You are a hero, a big star, a very brave person. Everyone loves you. We come to appreciate you every year. I'm sorry I wasn't there to help you in Karbala, but if I was, I would have helped you and your daughter Ruqayyah, and I would have given her food and water. Tonight is the night of Ashura, of the Muharram moon. The crescent will be a full circle soon. Zainab, you are a very strong woman. I am sad that you are going to be alone tomorrow, but I am also glad that you have so many people that love you now and share your sorrow. And that is why I love you, Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, and your wonderful family.
I think all of us can be very proud of Zara. Her mother's name is Zainab. Okay? So we can be very proud of her. She took the initiative on her own. And brothers and sisters, you know, we are one community, right? So we all provide an opportunity for everybody to develop, right? And there are people who step up and rise to the occasion like she is doing. And if we can all encourage, and I think this opportunity for all of us available, right? These are our future leaders, right? And we have to create a comfortable ground for them to develop, right? And they will be afraid. My younger ones, if you're afraid of coming here and making a mistake, it's okay. It's like you're in a bouncy house, right? If you fall down, we're gonna pick you up. You won't get hurt, okay? But you get stronger, okay? So I hope, and I really want to thank Brother Mansour Nakwi, who has been serving us for more than 20 years now, but I'm seeing that he's building a whole group of people who's training, mashallah. So I think we're coming along here quite good, right? Namaz time is always a challenge here because, Maghrib was really late today, right? And Allah says, you cannot do Fajr prayer, at night. So, I'm glad that we were late, but not too late. But, being on time is good. So, Sheikh, I will not be on your case anymore because now, I'm going to have namaz before you anyway, right? So I'm sorry if I give you reminders, but I think time is important, okay? Before I step down, I just want to have one other thing. Just give me a second, please. This is my appeal from last night. Last night I said that we were short $32,000. Alhamdulillah, because of the generosity of the community here, we're $3,000 short, less now, right? So it's not $32,297. We're $29,297, right? So brothers and sisters, please, be generous. Help us cover the cost. I mean, this is the cost to fix the things we have to fix, cover the cost of Muharram Ramadan. And those who are not members, you can become a member or pay your membership. I won't really take much of your time, but please help us today, and I'll be reminding you. Don't be tired of me. I'm going to not say much. I'm going to have you listen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words, okay? This is probably the best way for me to do it.
يا من هو الله الذي لا
ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر والملائكة والكتاب والنبيين وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والموفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء وحين البأس أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المتقون
Brothers and sisters, this is a beautiful verse in the Quran, ayat number 177, Surah Baqarah. This is the mission statement for us, all of us, right? To help those in need. Right? Your mosque is in need, refugees are in need, people who are homeless are in need. Right? So please be generous. And Imam Hussein said, Hal bin Nasir in Yansuruna, right? So we all responded. And you know, there's always shaitan who says, hey, you'll become poor. So Allah says,
مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف لمن يشاء والله واسع عليم.
Thank you for your time and attention. Just a reminder, tomorrow morning, our program will begin at 11 in the morning sharp with Amal for Ashura. We'll continue until about 1 o'clock. We have Salaat al-Dhuhri at 1:16, exactly 1:16 tomorrow. And then we will have the Maktal for the program for the Maktal starting at 2 p.m. Hopefully we'll finish the program at 4 p.m. And then there will be a 1 hour break. Ladies will have a program at 5 p.m. And then we will reconvene, all of us, at 8:46 p.m. at night with Salaat al-Maghrib, 8:46 p.m. And then after Maghrib, we'll have our program for the Sham al-Tariqa. So thank you all, and we will continue now with Salaat al-Mission, inshallah. If you have any questions, by the way, our programs are posted on the website, so you can click this multi-day event for multiple days, select the date you want, you will get the details. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون وما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقومون ويركعون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته نقوم ونفعل. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته نقوم ونعبد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية عافية الدنيا والآخرة. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم لما إنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر فيها البلدان فما فيما أنا قادر الحيران. لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل أم في أرض أم في السماء أم في بر أم في الأرض وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن عفوك وأسبابه بيدي وأنت الذي تقسمه وتسبب رحمته. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا ومأخذه قريبا ولا تعني بطلب ما فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله واجعل على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد. Sisters and brothers, we received some very sad news today from New Mexico. 4 brothers who are killed, murdered today in cold blood. Very sad for that. Let us remember all those people who are in this pain and suffering, those who are in hospitals. Request from Sister Farah Al-Sudani, Jaffa's mom is not well, hospitals. Let's remember all those people who are at home recovering, those who are languishing unjustly in prisons, people who are stuck in conflict zones, displaced or in refugee camps, those who are going through economic hardship. May Allah bring them relief. Let us all begin to pray for them. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه. The request to offer Surah Al-Fatiha for the sponsors of the work today, Dr. Jawad Sajan and Sister Sabrina Sajan, Ghulam Bas, Sakina Jafrali, Abdullah Nursim Shajan, Asgarili Rajwali Damani, and Anjum Damani. Also, Mahumins of the middle of Brother Muhammad Muntazim Mehdi and Sister Tazia Mehdi, whose co-sponsors of the Tarbur yesterday, we forgot to announce them, we apologize to them. all the Marumins of supporters of Muharram programs, for all our Marumin family members and friends. Al-Fatiha.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين سيد المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر لأحد مني زيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان 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 الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمامي وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة والحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا حتى تسكنه أهلك وتوبا وتمتعه فيها كبيرا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Sisters and brothers, thank you all for coming tonight. It was wonderful to see you. Thank you very much for your attention, for your politeness. Yeah. And inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. We all the program. Thank you all. And inshallah, help yourselves to Brother Rizwan is reminding me, please, when you go out, be mindful of our neighbors. They may be sleeping, so be careful. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Betrayal by the Kufans set this moon on its course, calling out for their guide. Treachery with no remorse, Muslim and his sons. What a tragedy, oh what calamity. The moon bleeds to foresee the moon pleased to foresee. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. On the 9th it heard the prayers of those pure souls for the rising sun, for perhaps this could be its role. Akbar's azan so clear, this moon filled with fear. How will it possibly arise and see the state of those dear, and see the state of those dear? The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. It saw the 6-month infant, no water but an arrow. That night it shone its light on Rabab, filled with such sorrow. To see my asghar I crave, I hear nothing but his cries. Oh son, please do not arise, and with this mother sympathize, and with this mother sympathize. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. Witnessed it the trampling on Sham-e Ghariba, saw that night the terror, bodies scattered afar, tents looted and on fire, earrings snatched from Ruqayyah. This moon also in such pains, this household bound in chains, this household bound in chains. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala. From this month my baby had to wander veilless. Zahra's grave is restless for her daughter princess, the cloak of purity. For this mother so holy, the beloved of Fatima, paraded in the bazaar, paraded in the bazaar. The moon of Muharram, times of sadness have come. The crescent has now arrived, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala, casting gloom on Karbala.